Welcome into another episode of Dads in Timeout. This is your host, Jesse Williams, and I have been off the podcast for a couple of weeks. A lot of that has to do with the fact that the NBA offseason ended. You know, we talked about the finals and free agency, talked a little bit about the Olympics, but I didn't really want to get into. I didn't get to watch a lot of the Olympics except for the basketball. And so, sorry, just looking around. Got some flies flying around out here. So if you see them, I guess they're trying to get on the podcast too. And I didn't really feel like covering a lot of the NFL preseason because a lot of that stuff is, besides the injuries that have happened, a lot of that is just roster spots and depth. Most of the teams, I mean, I know there's some quarterback battles that we'll get into, and I just didn't want to get into too much too early. The whole Tim Tebow thing was unfolding. Sorry. And so now we're back, and also prayers to all the people stuck in Afghanistan. I go on and on about that, but as a service member, I'm kind of restricted in what I can say just because the president is the commander-in-chief, and I'm a member of the armed services, so I can't publicly say a lot about the president anyway. So as a service member, you can just figure out how I feel about that. You can have an idea. I just think that we need to get all our people home. At the end of the day, prayers for the people on the Gulf Coast for the tropical storm or hurricane or whatever they're going to call it. The news was really confusing when I was looking into it. It just, a lot of the news, I think, was doing an irresponsible job and trying to use big words, hurricane slams. It's like, man, people's lives are at stake here, bro. Like, let's chill out on that. And so prayers for all those people, prayers for all the families, prayers for the 13 Marines that died, for all the Afghanis that died in the suicide bombing, or the IED or whatever it was that went off in Kabul. For all those people out there, just know our prayers are with you, and people still support your service back here, and we just hope that whole thing gets cleared up in the best way possible. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through each division of the NFL, and I'm going to make my predictions. I was going to do this a little closer to the season, but I don't have the super NFL knowledge to break down every team, and I just don't have that kind of time. But what the plan is once the season starts to preview each week. So do a preview of all the games upcoming and then do a recap after the games are done. I hope we can do that. So that'll give you at least 2 podcasts a week. So what we'll do is we'll end up previewing every game. So the podcast would have to be on at least Thursday before the games start. I'll make my picks. I don't know if I'm going to keep up with my picks. I'm going to try to. Maybe throw some fantasy football out there. Check out @FantasyPastor on Twitter. That's my boy Clint Followell on there. I've already shared a link on Twitter to his new podcast that's coming. I don't have the name off the top of my head, but it's going to be really good. He's passionate. He's knowledgeable. He's a great guy. Going to be a lot of good stories on there. Hopefully, when I do the show off the laptop, I can have him as a guest. I still want to have some other people on as guests. God willing, that can happen. So what I did is I went to a playoff predictor on Google, and I don't remember what the site was. It wasn't ESPN. And I just picked every game. And I played with it a while, and I tried to be as unbiased as possible. But I picked every game, then I came up with all the records, and I plugged in the playoffs. So I'm going to preview the season from beginning to end, starting with the AFC, then moving to the NFC. Then I'll jump into the playoffs. I have my list right here. There are some discrepancies because I looked at some of the records, and I was like, oh, I don't know. And a lot of this didn't happen earlier because we didn't know what Aaron Rodgers was going to do, so he's going to play. We don't know what the legal proceedings with Deshaun Watson is. We didn't know the quarterback battles coming out of camp in New Orleans or San Francisco, Chicago, even though Chicago is pretty easy to figure out. When I get to the Bears, I'll make comments about each team briefly just because I am on a time hack. But I hope Willie Christopher, shout out. He's a lieutenant in the Army, a National Guard, been to Ranger School. He hit me up today, and he's like, hey, man, I miss your sports content. I'm like, I promise it's coming, and guess what? Today it's coming. So let's get to it. 2021 NFL season. kicks off, I think, a week from Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it kicks off on September 9th. And we'll try to do some college football in there too, just whenever there's big games and once we get into conference and all that. And then we can even talk about some of the more conference alignment stuff. But let's get to it. So starting in the AFC, I have Buffalo winning that division, finishing 14-3. A lot of this has to do with schedule. I don't have the schedule in front of me. But Buffalo, I think, is the clear favorite in this division. They went to the playoffs last year. They made the conference championship game. They got a taste of it. Josh Allen is now an MVP candidate. He was one last year, but I think he finished second. But this year, I think he has a real chance to win it. Not going to say he's going to win it. We'll get to that here at the end. I just think with them and Stephon Diggs, if Cole Beasley ever gets on the field, not going to get into the COVID thing. Take the vaccine if you want. Don't take it if you want. When it's mandatory, whatever. Do what your heart tells you to do. Their backfield with Singletary and Zach Moss is going to be interesting. I have Zach Moss on my fantasy team. On one of my 2 fantasy teams, I have another draft on Friday. So if they can run the ball and get a lot of balance and their defense can shore up a little bit, I think that'll be beneficial for them. Don't know a lot of people on their defense, but Sean McDermott's one of the great young coaches in the league, and I think that Buffalo is primed to make a run. I have New England finishing second at 10-7. I still am not quite sure what they're going to do at quarterback, but it just seems like Mac Jones is going to play sooner than later. And there's a lot of winnable games on this schedule, and a lot of games that get tossed up. Like I can see New England being anywhere from 8-9 to 11-6, and possibly sneaking into the playoffs. I won't ruin that yet till I get to the end of the AFC. I have Miami at 10-7. The new development of Deshaun Watson and all that, I'll believe it when they trade. Tua is going to have Waddle. He's going to have Devontae Parker. They still have Gesicki at running back. And I don't remember who their tight end is, but I think Miami's got a really solid. They got the contract dispute with Xavier Howard. I think with Brian Flores, this team is another one of those. A lot of the things in the NFL is you could be anywhere from 7-10 to 11-6, and it's just how some of these close matchup games go. And so I think that Miami and New England. I think Miami has the better weapons. And I know that I'm missing somebody on Miami's offense that they drafted. I'm not sure, but I think they have a really good running back. I think Waddle's going to be really good, and I think that Devontae Parker, if he's your second best receiver, that he's going to be really good for them too. I had the Jets finishing 1-16 just because they just don't have a lot of talent and depth. They lost. They got Corey. Is Corey Davis their number one receiver now? I think that's correct. And Jamison Crowder. But I don't think Corey Davis is a true number one. I think he's more of a number two just based on what he did in Tennessee when they didn't have a lot of great receivers. I know they have A.J. Brown and now they have Julio. But A.J. Brown was emerging while Corey Davis was kind of that number one receiver for the past couple years. He would have got to 1,000 yards but didn't play the last game. So, and I don't think this is going to be Zach Wilson's not going to be good. It's just they're still building that team. If they keep doing well in the draft, then I think they have a chance to be better in the future. So in the AFC North, I have Cleveland winning the division at 12-5. So Browns fans, you can leave me alone. They're just with Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb. They got to figure out the Odell thing. They got to figure out a way to get him involved. It's not just jet sweeps. But they have Jarvis Landry and Rashad Higgins and Austin Hooper, who I really like as a tight end. They still have Njoku at tight end also. Their defense with Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. I think Denzel Ward plays for them. If not, forgive me. But I think that they got a taste of the playoffs last year. They're in a tough division, but I think they'll split with Baltimore, split with Pittsburgh. I think they'll do okay in their non-conference games. And so I just think, and they have a really, really good coach. And there's been no noise coming out of camp. You don't have Baker saying anything crazy. Myles Garrett's past the hitting Mason Rudolph with the helmet thing. I think they could, 12-5 sounds about right. Maybe 11-6, but I'll get to why I'm picking them when I pick some of the other teams. Now, people are going to say I'm a homer for this one, but I got Pittsburgh going 11-6. Now, they're going to have to win some tough games. They have Seattle. They have Minnesota on the road. Of course, they have their division games. And then they have Kansas City, the Chargers, Denver, and the Raiders. But I think they'll beat. And then they have the NFC North and the only scary team. But I have this. I have their losses being Cleveland, Baltimore. I have them sweeping the AFC South. I have them losing to Kansas City and to the Chargers. I think I don't remember. I have them losing to the Rams. I think they have they don't play the NFC West. Minnesota and Green Bay. There's a lot of close games. This is another one of those teams and now Pittsburgh raving about Najee Harris. If Roethlisberger can stay healthy and the arm can stay healthy, you've got Najee Harris and Deontay Johnson and Claypool and Schuster. So they have a stable of receivers. James Washington hasn't requested a trade. But that's your number 4 receiver, so they're deep in that area. Now, their backup running backs with McFarland and Snell, and I don't even remember the other guy, but Jalen Samuels, right? So whoever one of those guys doesn't probably make the roster. Snell has been a little bit of a disappointment, but I think Najee is ready to carry the bulk of that. I have Baltimore at 10-7. And this is why. So Rashad Bateman, their receiver, has been hurt. There's not a great connection between Lamar and Marquise Hollywood Brown. They got Sammy Watkins, but he plays like 7-8 games a year, and he's kind of never really been the guy out of Clemson that we thought he was going to be, for whatever reason that is. J.K. Dobbins just got hurt. I think if J.K. Dobbins doesn't get hurt, I think I give Baltimore another win. But at some point, Lamar is going to have to consistently throw the ball. He's super talented, right? And I don't care about the video of him playing on the concrete with the kids. Like, hey, man, it's his life. I mean, maybe make some smarter decisions in that regard, but not going to be mad at him out here playing with the kids. But just, man, be careful. But do your thing. I mean, he's going to. I think he's up for a big deal. I don't think he's gotten paid yet because Lamar and Baker are waiting to get paid now that Josh Allen has gotten paid. In Cincinnati, I have either a 5-12 or 4-13, and it's just the Jamar Chase thing. I think they'll figure it out. He hasn't looked great in camp, but he's super talented. They have T. Higgins, who I think is going to end up being a monster in this league, and then Tyler Boyd's now their number 3 receiver, and he's a borderline 1 or 2, not a 1 on a great team. I think they're deep. Joe Mixon is this year he puts it all together. But Cincinnati's trending in the right direction because Roethlisberger is going to leave eventually, and I think that's just one of those divisions that's going to be hard for them to move up. But, I mean, I think Joe Burrow is going to be fine. So in the AFC South, I have Tennessee at 11-6. I initially didn't pick them to win the division, but with Carson and the injury and COVID, and I just don't know what if they have. We'll get to Indianapolis. With Tennessee, you have Derrick Henry, who's on one of my fantasy teams. Just got 2,000-yard seasons, but usually after that, tailbacks start to tail off. But I think he'll score a lot of touchdowns. I think Tannehill is what he is at this point, a mid-tier quarterback who isn't going to mess it up for you, who's bounced back from his troubles in Miami. I think that Julio Jones, which Julio Jones are we going to get? Are we going to get dominant Julio, or are we going to get the Julio who's injured? You know, like he's already questionable. And Julio's also on one of my fantasy teams. So, of course, I want Julio to do well. So, Tennessee at 11-6. They could another one of those teams that could easily be 9-8. And so, Indianapolis is 7-10. At 7-10, too many questions. T.Y. Hilton's now hurt. Carson Wentz is going to have to bounce back. He's got a lot of adversity going on. If you see any messages flashing on there, the Army is just blowing my phone up right now. But I'm doing a podcast. Jonathan Taylor is really intriguing at running back. But listen, if they have to play Jacob Eason for any amount of time, they're in a lot of trouble. I have Jacksonville at 4-13. Now, this is a really intriguing team. They have some dude on their name that I can't pronounce. But they also have DJ Chark. Now, Travis Etienne does hurt them by being hurt. Didn't mean to say it that way. But I think James Robinson's capable of coming in and being a good player for them. Jacksonville's going to be exciting. I don't think they'll win a lot of games, but there'll be in a lot of games that could go either way. But, I mean, they're not going to push toward the playoffs. But seeing Urban Meyer there. But also, they could also be 3-14 because I have Houston at 1-16, which sounds crazy if Deshaun Watson plays, but I don't know how this is all going to develop. They don't have a lot of skill players. Their coach seems like he's in over his head. Will Fuller is gone. DeAndre Hopkins has been gone. They're in like a running back by committee with like Patrick Lindsay. And man, if these text messages show up on my video, dude, I am so sorry, dude. They're irritating the crap out of me with this because they just can't shut up on this group chat. And I hope y'all listen to this podcast and hear that. And so, Houston, if they didn't have Deshaun Watson at quarterback, I don't think they'd win a game. So I think they could get to 3 or 4 wins. Their schedule is just so many toss-up games where I think that they're going to lose just because. So I think it's Patrick Lindsay and David Johnson, and I don't even know, man. They have like 4 running backs, and so I think Houston's just going to be a mess. In the West, they have Kansas City at 16-1, could be 13-4. But I think they fixed the offensive line. They still have Tyreek. They still have Kelsey. They still have Edwards-Helaire, the running back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. These guys with 3 names always throw me off. But I think they're clearly the best team in the division. I think they're primed for another Super Bowl run. Of course, Patrick Mahomes. It'll be interesting to see what the depth at receiver looks like. They have Jerick McKinnon as the backup running back, which I think really helps them out. I wish I would have done more homework to know about their receivers, but I think Kansas City with Andy Reid there. Patrick Mahomes is already in his prime, and I think his prime is going to be a 10-year prime. I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I have the Chargers making a jump to 11-6. Don't know a lot about their coach Staley, but from everything I hear, it's a good hire. You've got Austin Eckler. They lost Hunter Henry, which he had been hurt. You've got Keenan Allen. I think Mike Williams. They've got just a stable of really talented receivers on that team. So I think they'll be good. Now, the bottom of this division is Denver at 8-9. Teddy Bridgewater they have to get this quarterback thing. Teddy is not a quarterback you want to roll with if you're trying to win the Super Bowl, but I guess Drew Lock couldn't beat him out. You got Jerry Jeudy from Alabama there still. You've got Cortland Sutton. They've got Melvin Gordon at running back. They also have Javonte Williams. So I think their running back is good. And they still have good defense. So they could sneak up into the playoffs if they had a better quarterback. If they had Deshaun Watson, I think this team is better than the Chargers. I think they just got a lot of talent that they can't really do a lot with because they don't have that guy that can push the ball down the field. I'm pretty sure they still have Fant at tight end, Noah Fant. So that, like, their offense would be great with like a prototypical sling the ball down the field, but Teddy's more of a safe quarterback. So to recap, I have Buffalo, New England, Miami, then the Jets. I have Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Baltimore to Cincinnati. I have Tennessee, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Houston. I have Kansas City, the Chargers, Denver, and then Las Vegas. So I had to talk about Vegas. I have them at 6-11. I love Derek Carr, but Henry Ruggs has to prove that he can really play. Hunter Renfrow. Once again, I didn't do enough research. Now, I'm a big Josh Jacobs fan. I like these Alabama running backs. Most of them have panned out. Mark Ingram. The only one that really didn't was Trent Richardson. Najee Harris, Damian Harris, Derrick Henry, of course. So I think that a lot of people are high on him, but I think he's a really good, maybe not great running back, but they have to stop falling apart in games. That's just a really good division, too, where I know the top 2 teams, and it doesn't look like it when I say the standings out, but it's a competitive division. All right, so in the NFC, I have Dallas 9-8. Listen, if Dak's healthy and the defense can be somewhat mediocre to good, they've got CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper. They've got Jarwin at tight end. They've got Ezekiel Elliott. They have Tony Pollard. They're just I think they're loaded on offense with guys that can just go make plays. And I'm sure I'm missing some people, but And it's all about Mike McCarthy, I think. And Jerry, Mike McCarthy and Jerry, like, if Dak's shoulder is fine and he plays the whole season, he's going to put up the numbers. And I think that and I just don't think this division's good. I have the Giants at 9-8. If Saquon bounces back, and this is a tiebreaker, I did this several times where the Giants won anywhere between 7 and 10 games. This is about Daniel Jones. Can he be the guy to take the Sterling Shepard and now that they have the guy from Detroit, I'm drawing a blank. Evan Ingram's been kind of a disaster for them. John Ross also plays for them. Who is Darius Slayton also is a receiver, but they got the guy that came from, why can't I think of this guy's name? He was a guy that played for Detroit, was a free agent. They got him in free agency. Someone will let me know, but I just cannot think of this dude's name, which makes you think he's not that important. If it comes to me, I will let you know. But I think the Giants' defense is going to be tough, and I think a lot of these games are going to be close. Washington, they have McLaurin or McLaughlin, whatever that guy's name is, at receiver. They've got Fitzmagic starting with Taylor Heineke waiting in the wings. Ron Rivera, but we've already had some disgruntled. Logan Thomas, I think, is a very underrated tight end, also on my fantasy teams. That's why I'm saying that. And then they have, I think it's Andre Gibson. Man, I don't know half these dudes' names, but Gibson, the running back, he had a really good year last year, blew up on Thanksgiving. So Washington's going to be an interesting team, but I just think at some point they're going to replace Fitzmagic. They don't have, I don't think, the quarterback of the future, though Heineke played really well in the playoffs. Philadelphia at 3-14. Listen, Jalen Hurts is your quarterback. You had Joe Flacco behind him, and then you go and you get Gardner Minshew. So I don't know what they're doing there. I think that this year is going to be a disaster. I think Jalen Hurts is just in a bad situation. I think he should have time to develop. He's not one of these guys that's going to come in and be super great in his second year. He didn't have enough time last year. He came in late in the season, the whole Carson Wentz debacle. And so Philadelphia with Sirianni or whatever their coach's name is just in a bad spot. I'm really upset that I can't remember this Detroit Lions wide receiver that just went to the Giants. Galladay. Galladay, that's his name, Galladay. So I think Galladay helps their receiving core in New York. So Green Bay, now that Rodgers is going to play, I have him at 13-4. If they play like they've played the last 2 years, they're going to be right there in the mix. Defensively, I haven't really paid too much attention to them, but they have Dillon at running back. They have Aaron Jones at running back. They have Devontae Adams, who I guess is the best receiver in the NFL. He had an amazing year last year. You've got Valdez-Scantling. You've got Randall Cobb is back. And they have another guy I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but what is his name? Scantling, excuse me. I know there's another receiver there I'm not thinking of, but they're loaded on offense. I think that they're going to be really, really good. It's all about the playoffs for them. Aaron Rodgers probably in his last year. I think he's going to ball out, be an MVP candidate. Minnesota's the toughest team I had because they have so many tough games and so many primetime tough games that I've never been huge on Kirk Cousins. But with Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson on that team, with just that trio of weapons, not even to mention whoever they got at tight end, which, once again, I don't remember. But Minnesota is a really, really, really good team. And just based on how the schedule played out, I have them at 10-6. Chicago, I have at 3-13 because they can't block anybody. And this really depends on why Matt Nagy is playing. Maybe Matt Nagy's playing Andy Dalton. And, Andy Dalton should definitely have insurance because the Dallas Cowboys let him get killed last year. And it looks like the Bears are going to let him get killed to save Justin Fields. I think if Fields plays, they can maybe up this win total to 4 or 5. The defense is still really good with Khalil Mack. But they have Allen Robinson, who they re-signed. And I can't remember who their running back is. I know they have David Montgomery, and they still have Tariq Cohen. I'm just not quite sure what this team is doing. I think Nagy's gone after this year, even though I like Nagy. Just they picked the wrong quarterback. Detroit 1-16. I almost had them going 0-17. I don't like these coaches that come in with all these stupid cliches. And this podcast sounds really negative. I'm sorry, I don't mean for it to, but it's just kind of giving my opinion on what's going on. And I'm just going to check the time real quick. All right, cool. I got to get into off break pretty soon. But so Chicago at 3-13, Detroit at 1-16. They lost their best receiver. Perriman got cut. So now their best receiver is Tyrell Williams. I'm not even going to try to remember their running back because the Lions have just been a joke for so long that Matt Stafford had to ask out of there. God bless his heart. Tampa Bay 15-2. They bring everybody back. They're loaded. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. They have Antonio Brown, Ronald Jones Jr. They have Leonard Fournette. They've got, and that's just on offense. They have Bray at tight end. They have Gronk at tight end. They have Scotty Miller, who's always a weapon that Brady likes to use. So offensively, they're going to be fine. They bring back all the defensive guys. Shaq Barrett, JPP, that's Pierre Paul. I forgot his first name because I'm kind of winging this together. But yeah, I think Tampa Bay could go 17-0, but they'll lose a couple games. Brady will look bad, and we'll be like, Brady's falling off a cliff. And then they'll dominate. Ndamukong Suh's still there. Just so many players that I don't even have time to name because I am in kind of a rush. New Orleans at 8-9, but I think Jameis is going to throw for at least 5,000 yards. But Michael Thomas getting that surgery late really hurts them. I think that Taysom Hill is going to be in the mix somewhere. Jared Cook has been an underwhelming tight end for them. And then they have Callaway at receiver, and they have another one of them dudes on my fantasy team. I can't remember his name. Yeah. They have another really good receiver, but they're not nearly as deep with the weapons on offense as they have been in the past. No Drew Brees, but I think that, and this is just because the NFL is really tough. And so I just think that New Orleans winning 8 games is not a terrible fall off. I think they'll win some games they shouldn't. I think Jameis will play well. Alvin Kamara is still there, though, so that's we'll see if they still throw out of the backfield, because I don't really know if that's Jameis' style, but Jameis can chunk it. If he could limit the turnovers, they could be a sneaky playoff sleeper as a team that could sneak into the playoffs, but I don't have them there. Atlanta at 6-11, new coach Arthur Smith. Matt Ryan starting to age. No more Julio Jones. Now you have Calvin Ridley. You have Gage at receiver. You've got, Hooper got traded from them to the Browns. So, and the defense, we have no idea. Dan Quinn, that defense was terrible under him. So, and they're just in the wrong division. Carolina at 6-11, Christian McCaffrey, if he stays healthy, always a candidate for 2,000 plus all-purpose yards. They've got DJ Moore, David Moore. They've got Robbie Anderson. So, and Terrace Marshall, one of my underrated players for the year, is on that team. So they're all, and now they have Sam Darnold at quarterback. So this team could be a really fun 6-11 team. It could be a turnover machine. This is where we'll see where Sam Darnold really is after being stuck with the lowly Jets. The West, they have the Rams at 15-2. Matt Stafford. Sean McVay loves him like he's his own son. They've got Deshaun Jackson as their 4th receiver. They got Robert Woods. They got Cooper Kupp. They have other receivers. They have a guy named Van Jackson, I think, that's like really fast. They went and drafted a bunch of speedy receivers. Cam Akers being hurt hurts them. I don't remember who their backup is, but I don't think it's going to matter. I just think that Sean McVay doing what he did with the players, with the quarterback he had, I just think this team is going to make a march. Seattle with Tyler Lockett, Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, and DK Metcalf. Their offense should be great. They still have Bobby Wagner. They still have, and then Jamal Adams, who they traded for and had to pay. They have a Diggs guy whose contract's up and he's unhappy. This is, I think, the year where we find out if this Pete Carroll thing's going to work. Because I think if they fall and instead of going 12-5, I think if they go like 9-8 and miss the playoffs, I think rumblings, even though Pete Carroll's been to 2 Super Bowls and won 1 and darn near won 2, the seat could be getting a little warm, and he's getting older. So, but I think Seattle gets in the playoffs. Russell Wilson buys them at least 3 wins. Arizona at 10-7, easily could be 7-10. I'm not quite sure with their coaching staff, but you have Kyler Murray. See if he can take another step, and then you've got James Conner, who didn't really do great in Pittsburgh. He had that one kind of good year, but they've also got DeAndre Hopkins, and Christian Kirk, and Chase Edmonds also in the backfield. I guess they got all the Pittsburgh dudes, didn't they? And so we'll see. San Francisco at 7-10. I don't know what to do. They're so talented. Jimmy Garoppolo. There's so many toss-up games on their schedule. The Niners could be 10-7, and Arizona could be 7-10. But how much of Trey Lance do we see? You have Mostert, and then their backup running back, also Trey Sermon from Oklahoma/Ohio State. I think he's going to be a really good running back. Kyle Shanahan, I think this is a pick I think I'm going to be wrong on. But I think their quarterback thing and Jimmy G's propensity to get hurt. And then I didn't look up their receivers, to be honest. But I just, this team is a weird one. This team could go either way. So real quick, playoff preview. I got in the wild card, Pittsburgh beating Tennessee 24-13. They're not going to let Derrick Henry run all over them. Julio's not 100% by then. You got Cleveland beating the Chargers 33-30. Buffalo beating Baltimore 31-13. And the NFC wild card, I have Seattle beating Dallas. Sorry, Mikey. 27-21. I just think Dallas gets behind early and they're not able to catch up. Green Bay 33, Minnesota 21. Minnesota's happy to be here. They're lucky to be here, but Green Bay is going to be on a mission. Tampa Bay is going to beat Arizona 38-20. They're going to blow them out of the water. They're going to be rested, a week off. Brady's going to torch them. In the divisional round, I have Kansas City beating Pittsburgh, unfortunately, 34-27. But I think they'll be up 2 scores, and Pittsburgh will try to come back late. But Big Ben goes out he throws an interception or two, but Kansas City's just too good all around. Buffalo beating Cleveland 27-23. Baker can't keep up with Josh Allen. They hold on. I think that Baker goes, and they just fizzle out at the end. Tampa Bay, Green Bay, a rematch of last year. I just don't think Green Bay will be able to pull it off. I have Tampa Bay 34, Green Bay 33. Brady's going to lead a last-second field goal. And then the Rams are going to beat Seattle 38-27, but it's really going to be like 38-21, and then Seattle's going to score, or 38-20, then Seattle's going to score a late touchdown. Conference championship game is where it gets dicey, because I have Buffalo beating Kansas City 31-30 on a last-second field goal after Kansas City's defense gets tired, and Josh Allen gets them in the field goal range. They boot a field goal, and Kansas City goes home. And then I have the Rams beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know I can't believe I'm saying this. 30-28. And Brady still doesn't retire. And so in the Super Bowl, I have the Rams beating Buffalo 31-27. Buffalo fans, I am so sorry. I want to pick you guys so bad. And I'm even wanting to change my mind. I love the Buffalo fan base so much. And this would make y'all 0-5 in Super Bowls. But the Rams are my pick. Now, real quick, teams I think that can legitimately win the Super Bowl this year. Buffalo, Kansas City, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, the Rams, and Seattle. Those are my 6 teams. I think those 6 teams can make a run. I think the Chargers, the Browns, the Steelers, and maybe I think those teams could get to a conference championship. Teams I think that can make the playoffs that I didn't list: New England, Miami, Indianapolis, if they fix their issues with the COVID and all that. I think the Giants could win the division. Washington's defense could get them there. New Orleans or Carolina or Atlanta could sneak in as a wild card, just because I don't think there's a lot separating those teams. And then San Francisco or Arizona could get in. I don't have Denver. I want to think Vegas, but their schedule does not permit that. And then the teams that are just going to be awful are the Jets and Houston. There's no way that Deshaun Watson they have done him no favors. And he did them no favors if he's guilty of what he did. And if he's not, then whatever. Anyways, I have to run. This has been another episode of Dad's in Timeout. You can find me on Twitter at JWillSportsGuy. On there is my link tree, so this will be on YouTube, but I also have podcasts on Spotify, on Apple, Google, And then my link tree's on there. So check my link tree on Twitter or on Facebook if you have me on Facebook. If you don't, I'm not going to tell you my Facebook name because I don't know you and I don't need you on my Facebook. I got you on Twitter. Unless you want to, then send me a DM. All right. Till then, peace out. God bless.